All right. The Indigenous Music Project. Some of you participated in part 1. Part 2 is coming up. As part of the Indigenous Music Project, congregation members are invited to the Compound Studio, which is in Long Beach, on Sunday, September 18th from 2 to 6. Come participate in the recording session of our Universal Welcome Song to help celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. Music producer Antoine Arvizu will be directing and recording everyone who would like to sing, clap, or play an instrument of their choice. No formal music training or experience is required. That's next Sunday, the 18th, from 2 to 6. And on Saturday, next Saturday, the 17th, our MTT is doing race talks, rise and hate crimes against Asians. That's next Saturday, the 17th, from 10 to 11:30, and you can also get the Zoom link if you'd like to zoom in on that. So I think, and the Seekers meeting. The Seekers meeting will be happening Wednesday. A couple of things maybe not happening because of the holiday, but Seekers will be happening on Wednesday. So I think that's everything. Didn't I say that? Yeah. That's all right. It bears repeating. New member meeting. Thank you, Leanne. Okay. I think that's everybody. So now we will have the chalice lighting, and Chloe is going to light the chalice while I say a few words written by Reverend Suzelle Lynch. This is quite nice, I think. Each time we light the chalice, we renew our commitment to our Unitarian Universalist faith. With the spark of a match, we make it new again, as fresh and surprising as the first day we encountered this spiritual community and realized we were home. Opening words. And our wonderful new interim minister, Chloe, will give you some opening words.
Thank you so much, Darcy. My name is Chloe Briede, and I'm the new interim minister here at Pacific Unitarian. And we opened this morning with words from the Reverend Dr. Megan Visser, and she's a local minister actually here in the LA area at our congregation in Santa Clarita. We enter this sanctuary for kindness and comfort. May rough, worn hands and aching backs be healed. We enter this sanctuary of hope for equality. May those who labor to survive live to know justice. We enter this sanctuary of love and vocation. May our bonds of solidarity be strengthened. We enter this sanctuary of courage and friendship. May we proceed hand in hand towards freedom. May it be so. And our opening hymn this morning is one of my favorites on Labor Day. The hymn is As We Come Marching, Marching, and it uses the phrase bread and roses. Writer Sam Worley says that this phrase comes from Rose Schneiderman, who was a socialist, a feminist, and a union organizer who was born in Poland in 1885 and died in New York City in 1972. It refers to the notion that a political movement whose demands is mere substance suffers from a poverty of imagination, that survival is far from enough. What Schneiderman fought for was the right to live, she said, not simply exist. The right to live as a rich woman has the right to life, the sun and music and art. The worker must have bread, but she must have roses too. In 1911, James Oppenheim wrote a poem called Bread and Roses, envisioning scores of women marching in the streets demanding more. So our opening hymn this morning is As We Come Marching, Marching. You may rise in body or spirit as we sing.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million a thousand workshops gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For people hear us singing bread and roses, bread and roses, as we come marching, marching in the battle to for men. For they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Heart starve as well as body. Give us bread, but give us roses as we come marching, marching. The numbered women dead go crying through our singing as ancient songs of bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits knew. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we bring a greater days, the rising of the women and the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler, tend that toil where one reposes, but sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses.
And now it's time for our children's hour. Our children's hour. It won't be an hour, I promise. The children's moments. And Jewel will.
I'd like to invite all the kids to come forward. And while they come, I just want to say thank you to everybody who donated to all of our drives this year. We got so many school supplies. We were able to deliver them to the backpack drive in one in Carson, one in Linwood, and one in Compton. And that was so neat to see people taking away all of your gifts. And we also donated. Oh, go ahead, clap, Robin. We also were able to donate lots of food to lots of peanut butter to Kelly, and the lunch program on Monday, and we have tons of food that's going to go to a gentleman that I don't know if you guys remember when Angela and Tutu had the meditation where you got money raised money for every block of 15 minutes you meditated. So that charity is down in Mexico, and it houses about 1,300 refugees from all over South America and Ukraine. And so a gentleman from that charity, we had an event and we're able to donate money to him, and he's going to be settling in Long Beach. So your donations will be filling up his pantry on top of helping Kelly out. So thank you guys so much for your generosity. And we will have lots of service projects coming up in the year. So this week is the end of our RE year. We've had a really fun year. Lots of stuff. It is actually almost exactly a year ago that I first came to PUC. I don't know if you guys remember, I did the United Nations. Yeah, I did the United Nations lesson. That was my first day at PUC, and there wasn't one kid here. So it was really awkward to do a children's moment with not one kid. And so thank you guys for being here. My first week with the kids. One of my favorite memories, we did the Gift of the Magi, and we played with real frankincense and myrrh. And these guys asked me, it was Lily, first question, first day meeting her, which pronouns? And they were just so smart and fun, and we've been having a good time ever since. So I'm just super proud of the work we have done. We have. So all summer long, we've had this project where we have talked about different tools that we use as our faith. And so we created a covenant. We've talked about our principles. We worked on the chalice, examining, going deeper, being flexible in our ideas, taking time to reflect, our inner compass, and what the tools that we use to guide us. We explored democracy and how we wield our power. And these kids are they're so special. They're really deep thinkers and really beautiful people. And I couldn't be just more privileged to be able to teach them our faith. And so as we've explored our faith, one of the things that we've really been needing is quick ways to describe what is a Unitarian Universalist. So the UUA says Unitarian Universalism affirms and promotes 7 principles grounded in the humanistic teachings of the world's religions. Our spirituality is unbounded, drawing from scripture and science, nature and philosophy, personal experience, and ancient tradition as described in our 6 sources. So that's a lot for a 5-year-old to say what they do at their church. So I just thought I would open up to you guys if somebody has an elevator speech that they use when somebody asks them about their faith or their church. Okay.
It's an off-brand Christianity that doesn't believe in a God, and we don't have a solid book. Instead, we have guidelines on how to be a good person.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Alex. That was awesome. Oh, was it you? Chelsea.
You know what? Usually when I say something, they go, "Is that a cult?" And I go, "It's not a cult. We just do things and believe things that we should do. Be good people."
Hi. So just one phrase I've heard. We're more interested in getting heaven into people than people into heaven.
Nice. Anyone else?
Yeah, I've actually done this. I quote the 4th principle that that's a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you, guys. Okay. Oh, one more. Oh, Elle. Hi, Elle. Gonna do it in English or Spanish? You don't want to go? Okay. You don't have to. You could tell us later when we get to our classroom. Okay. So something that I thought was quick and easy is Frank Lloyd Wright said, "I believe in God, but I spell it nature." Yeah. So today is Family Fun Day Sunday. We are celebrating the end of our year, and I'll tell you guys more about the things we're going to do next year. But for today, to close us out, Amy is the tie-dye queen. She loves tie-dyeing, so she brought stuff for the whole church to tie-dye outside after church. So we'll see you after lunch. Okay, let's sing out our kids. Thank you, guys.
So we will sing out our kids with Now Let Us Sing.
Here we go. Now let us sing, sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing, sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice, be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within.
And you may stay seated and join us in our centering hymn, Voice Still and Small, centering down into this moment of worship as we sing together.
Here we go. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In darkened rain, sorrows and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, drenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Let's do it again. Here we go. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In darkened rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, drenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
Now is our time for joys and concerns, and Minister Chloe and Leanne are gonna, Minister Chloe is gonna make that happen with the candles, and you've got the microphone. May I say one thing, because I forgot when I made the announcements, one thing I wanted to give a pitch for joining the choir. Come join the choir. The choir is resuming. It's really wonderful. I always remember a long time ago, because I started singing with the choir like 10 years ago in 2012, and Severin said, "You're welcome, everybody, to come sing one song or for the rest of your life." So I thought that was very cool. Okay, please, if you want to share a joy or concern.
As many of you know, I'm missing my daughter Renee, and when she first got to college, she's at Chapman.
last candle for all the joys and sorrows that we hold in our hearts that may or may not have been spoken today. Thank you all for sharing today. We're lifting up prayers and blessings for all those in our midst who are dealing with hard times. We pray for our communities, especially those affected by the mill fire, who have lost homes and livelihood. And we also pray for those for which this heat poses a risk to health and livelihood. We delight also with those experiencing joy. So thank you for sharing. I invite you to close your eyes for a second in the spirit of prayer as I read a prayer by Cesar Chavez. It's called A Prayer for the Farm Workers' Struggle, and I think it's fitting on this Labor Day weekend. May these words flow over you as a balm of inspiration. Show me the suffering of the most miserable, so I will know my people's plight. Free me to pray for others, for you are present in every person. Help me take responsibility for my own life so that I can be free at last. Grant me courage to serve others, for in service there is true life. Give me honesty and patience so that I can work with other workers. Bring forth songs and celebration so that the Spirit will be alive among us. Let the Spirit flourish and grow so that we will never tire of the struggle. Let us remember those who have died for justice, for they have given us life. Help us love even those who hate us, so we can change the world. Amen.
This is this song is about people that don't have a job, but they labor anyway. So maybe you can tell them. We're going to do these songs in Spanish, or actually, Josella is going to do these songs in Spanish.
Well, we are. You're playing the keys.
No.
So yeah, I'll try to just introduce briefly each of the songs that I'm performing today. And this is a beautiful tune that Severin actually wrote for me, and he wanted me to make it about the homeless. And so what I did is I started really looking at interviews of homeless people. There's some actually very interesting interviews on YouTube. Just trying to figure out what, just to get in that mindset, figure out what do these voices say that they're missing in their lives or that they need. And what really struck me was that a commonality was they wouldn't talk about, oh, I miss having a roof over my head, or I miss, they miss their family. They miss losing custody of their child. Some mothers they can't see their children anymore, or their friends. Because of circumstances, they may have lost all of their family, or chosen family. So this song is about that. It's about basically losing your ability that we take for granted for dreaming and longing, and just surviving one more day, and being stuck in that struggle. Me siento invisible, nadie puede ayudarme. Encerrado al aire libre, sin tener a dónde ir. El peligro ya es costumbre, perdida en la muchedumbre, y sigo sobreviviendo un día más. ¿Dónde escaparé del frío, de la tormenta y del llanto, del dolor y del espanto, de no saber qué pasará? Ando solo y por mí mismo, hago lo que necesito y sigo sobreviviendo un día más. ¿Y cuánto yo daría por volver a lo que tuve alguna vez? Y quiero darme el lujo de soñar, que es un lujo cuando no hay de qué comer y las grietas van creciendo. Veo a más gente cayendo a este mundo a plena vista, que nadie quiere ver. Nadie escoge a esta vida que te amarra a la deriva, que sigo sobreviviendo un día más. Nadie escoge a esta vida que te amarra a la deriva, que sigo sobreviviendo un día más. Sobreviviendo un día más.
Thank you, Severin and Joselle. That was great. And there's water coming around the sanctuary, so if you need some, be sure to get some from Soren. Thank you, Soren. We have to do everything we can to keep cool today. Our reading this morning comes from a speech that was given. It's titled A May Day speech from 1930. It was given in Chicago by a woman named Lucy Parsons. And she says, "I am greatly afraid, comrades, that my voice will not reach to all of you, but believe me, my spirit will reach to the farthest corners of the room." The hall that she was speaking in was so large that she couldn't get her voice across the whole room, so that's why she said that. And she says, "Now I'm going to bring you a message that 44 years ago today, we had our first introduction on American soil of what was known as a great strike. It was the introduction of the 8-hour day in America. From 12 hours to 8 hours was a great step, and I have the honor to be one of those who was so instrumental in my small, humble way in preparing for that immense strike. I wish I had the strength. I wish I had the wisdom. I wish I was a fine enough speaker to depict to you Chicago 44 years ago. We had been organizing the working class for nearly a year, very quietly. They were so downtrodden, she says, in those days that the capitalists paid little attention to them. But when the 1st of May came and this slogan went forward, "Throw down your arms, throw down your tools, and come out." Why I have never seen such a strike. It was a psychological moment. It was a spontaneous strike, and they came out by the thousands until the capitalist class claimed themselves that there were 40,000 who stood out in the streets of Chicago. And when they tried to get them to go back to work, the workers replied, "I will be damned if I go back to work under such conditions." That was the spirit of the day, says Lucy. Happy Labor Day. How are you celebrating Labor Day? Maybe you're having a barbecue today, perhaps, or dinner with friends and family. Maybe you're enjoying the outdoors. I would say spending some time at the beach, maybe in the water. Or maybe even in this heat wave, you're like me, you're hiding with your window AC unit in that one room during the hottest hours of the day. I like to preach on Labor Day. In fact, I appreciate having at least a yearly time to reflect on work, on labor, and on workers' rights. In college, I had the privilege of studying labor for a semester in New York City. In addition to learning about the labor movement and modern state of labor, I got to witness the inner workings of labor unions. In particular, I was with the United Auto Workers, and I got to meet organizers from across the movement. And I had believed in unions and known some about their importance before that, but my time in New York solidified my commitment to the power of workers joining together as a collective for the benefit of each other. Labor Day is much more than a long weekend. It's an acknowledgement of the work that went into us getting here today. There's a bumper sticker I've seen before that says, "Support unions." From the folks who brought you the weekend, child labor laws, overtime pay, minimum wage, injury protection, workers' compensation insurance, pension security, sick leave, and safer working conditions, and much, much more. True. And I heard a similar note from our reading today, a speech by Lucy Parsons. Lucy was a Mexican-American woman born and raised in Texas. She married Albert Parsons and became an activist for workers' rights. Her husband, Albert, was famously executed as a result of the Haymarket Affair. This was when a bomb was thrown at police after a large labor rights protest in Chicago in 1886. And although everybody knew that Albert hadn't been involved in the bombing, he turned himself in solidarity with other activists. While he may have been granted clemency, if he had written a letter of regret and confession to the governor, his convictions and perhaps his stubbornness prevented that. And so Albert died by the state a couple years after that Chicago incident. And Lucy spent many years after her husband's death organizing for workers' rights and preserving her husband's legacy. She gave speeches all across the country, much like the one that we heard today. And that excerpt that we heard today is part of her story. The work that she and others did in the late 19th century is why the workday went from 12 hours to 8. She says, "Now I'm going to bring you a message that 44 years ago today, we had our first introduction on American soil of what was known as the Great Strike. It was the introduction of the 8-hour workday in America. From 12 hours to 8 hours was a great step, and I had the honor to be one of those who was so instrumental in my small and humble way in preparing for that immense strike." Lucy had been part of the introduction of the idea of an 8-hour workday into the American labor movement. And although this didn't become a reality until 1933, 3 years after she gave this speech that we're hearing, she was speaking to the immense work that was going into them getting to that milestone, the fight for 8 hours, an 8-hour workday. Can you imagine anything being different? The 40-hour work week, the standard 8-hour day, feels like such a part of our existence. It's sort of like an assumption we make. And it feels like an unchanging reality in our society. Imagine convincing a society to change that. 12 to 8. Labor Day is not only, though, about important union struggles or the importance of unions in the history of labor, but also in other important milestones and advocacy work. One I've been learning about recently was the important role of queer men in pushing for their rights as flight attendants. From demanding that men be allowed into the profession that had become an all-female profession, to the struggle for acceptance of HIV-positive people into employment, to spousal benefits for partners of gay folks. Gay and queer men continually pushed to be recognized and treated equally by their unions and by their companies in the airline industry. And it's a little talked about part of the workers' rights history, and the workers' rights movement, and I really love it. The Reverend Carl Gregg is a UU minister at our church in Frederick, Maryland, and he writes that the way we look at work has changed over time. He says in ancient Greece, the ideal was to be a free citizen who didn't have to work, but who rather spent his days divided between lifelong learning and democratic engagement with politics. When the Roman Empire came to power, the Greek emphasis on community service was eclipsed by an increased focus on the elite having the luxury of doing whatever they individually enjoyed in the private sphere. In contrast with the turn to the Middle Ages, more importance was placed on the Christian work ethic. In this worldview, idleness became viewed as a vice. And an even more decisive shift came during the Industrial Revolution and the rise of capitalism. Rather than merely sustaining one's existence, work was redefined as primarily to create and accumulate wealth and capital and money. It's been a long shift from the ideals of being of relaxation and civil engagement to the ideals or societal expectations of working as hard as possible and accumulating as much money as possible. It feels familiar today that Protestant work ethic has come with us even until today. With the rise of automation, you would think that the 8-hour workday would become the 6-hour workday, but in post-pandemic world, this seems to be the opposite. In 2021, the payroll company ADP found that on average, workers put in 9.2 hours of unpaid overtime a week. And while this went down a bit from 2021 to 2022, we're now at 8.5, you can still imagine it, 40 hours plus 8.5, 9 hours. And that means that people are working even more than that. And I'm not really surprised to hear these numbers, actually. And perhaps you aren't either. I've heard some of you talk about sort of how much your children work or how much other folks you know work. And just this last week, I even got a phone call from a friend who works at a large tech company, one that seemed to be that we won't name here, but she recounted staying up all night to finish a project by the next day deadline, sacrificing health and sleep for a high salary and likely an arbitrary deadline. And on the flip side, personally, I've spent time on food stamps and Medicaid, benefiting from both programs when my wage was too low or when I was without a job. Neither low wages or long hours are what we're aiming for. And so you may have heard this phrase recently. You've heard quiet quitting. Have we read this in the newspapers? Yeah. And it's described as a stealth retreat from the hustle culture of giving up everything in pursuit of ambition. Quiet quitting is a newly minted moniker for doing the bare minimum of the job description. And that's what they describe it as. But I don't love the phrase quiet quitting. Instead, I might call it setting boundaries. It is living into a phrase that comes from the labor movement, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. And sometimes that last phrase, 8 hours for what we will, is sometimes said instead 8 hours for everything else, or for recreation, or for play. And I think for everything else is an apt name. Yes, there's recreation and play, but there's also housework and cooking and tending to our relationships and our own personal well-being. This phrase, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will, was used during Lucy Parsons' time to frame the argument around changing the 12-hour workday. Imagine 4 hours less a day for what we will. For me, one of the boundaries that I've kept since starting my ministry work is having a Sabbath day, a day that during the hectic week, I can do my best on that day to not do any work. And this looks like turning off notifications on my phone, not checking email, not going to work for events or other occasions. And while I'm not always perfect, it's important for me. It helps me rest my brain even, not just my body, and start the week again feeling more alive. What if we were all resourced enough to take Sabbaths? What if the trend wasn't towards more work, getting the most out of everybody's labor potential, getting the most out of a human being, but towards less work? Perhaps along with the headlines around quiet quitting, you've also seen the phrase, robots are stealing your jobs, not migrants. And the Reverend Carl Gregg, who we took our history lesson from earlier, says that many of the best economists regularly predicted that well before the 20th century ended, a golden age of leisure would arrive, when no one would have to work for more than 2 hours a day. Can you believe that? And we know this hasn't happened, right? In fact, the trend what we saw is that it's not getting better. And perhaps it's even getting worse with deeper demands on workers' time. That especially when they're at home, people getting emails and messages and other stuff that's keeping them constantly connected to the job. As a UU, we espouse values that encompass the whole human, not just their labor productivity or their earning potential. We unite around values that benefit the planet and all of life. In those values, I can imagine us believing in a world with more equity and one that might include less work. Perhaps we could strive for 6 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, and 10 hours for whatever else, using technology to better the world for everyone. There are some ways to do this. If you like, you can take a look at the PRO Act, the Protect the Right to Organize Act, which is expanding labor protections to make it easier for U.S. workers to organize. While it probably won't pass the Senate this year, it could help workers organize for better wages, benefits, and conditions. And we might also consider how to make our society more equal, especially as automation increases. The last couple of years, I've been learning about ideas like universal basic income, a payment to most people in our society to help alleviate poverty and provide flexibility. As UUs, we can also help in our own church. We can continue to keep with the salaries suggested by the Unitarian Universalist Association for paying fair wages. We can continue to provide good health care and retirement benefits, and we can continue to be flexible with each other, especially when the demands on all of us are coming from a lot of different places: family, home, work, and even the pains of the world. Supporting causes that help make life better for many and not just a few is an important part of our Unitarian Universalist values. Happy Labor Day, beloveds. May we remember those who fought for our rights and continue their legacies. May it be so.
And now you might want to labor your way into your wallets and give for the life of this church.
Y apágame la vela, porque esta no es la última, pero tampoco es la primera. Perdóname por insistir, pero hay una mejor manera. Suéltate un poquito y nena, deja la telenovela. Nena, deja la telenovela. Tu problema es un problema, si lo dejas ser problema. Nena, deja la telenovela. Nena, deja la telenovela. No te agobies, no te jures que lo bueno siempre llega. Nena, deja la telenovela. que piensa negativo no le llega ni una primavera. Porque esta vida hay que bailarla al vaivén de todo como llega. Suéltate un poquito y nena, deja la telenovela. Nena, deja la telenovela. Tu problema es un problema, si lo dejas ser problema. Nena, deja la telenovela. Nena, deja la telenovela. No te agobies, no te ajores, que lo bueno siempre llega. Nena, deja la telenovela.
Thank you, Severin and Joselle, and also our, I can't think what it's called, Tambourines, Gary. So our closing hymn, I think most of you know, is Building a New Way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free, feeling it every day. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Peace and freedom is our cry. Without these the world will die. Peace and freedom is our cry.
This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences, beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together. In spite of time and death and the space between the stars, we pause in silent witness to that unity.
May the blessing of love be upon you. May love's peace abide with you. May love's presence illuminate your hearts, now and forevermore. So be it. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. And blessed be. And now our service truly begins.
Solamente una vez amé en la vida, solamente una vez y nada más. Una vez nada más en mi huerto brilló la esperanza. La esperanza que alumbra el camino de mi soledad. Una vez nada más se entrega el alma con la dulce y total renunciación. Y cuando ese milagro realiza el prodigio de amarse, hay campanas de fiesta que cantan en mi corazón. Una vez nada más se entrega el alma con la dulce y total renunciación. Y cuando ese milagro realiza el prodigio de amarse, hay campanas de fiesta que cantan en mi corazón. Thank you.
So to go under the sprinklers by the children's thing and get yourself. And there's lunch. So go get cooled and then go get some lunch, please.
Oh,